Welcome to another weekly Forex forecast. We had once again an interesting week with an unexpected euro strengthening. We did expect some euro strength the week before. We discussed that in the weekly Forex forecast, but what we saw was still quite impressive and quite surprising. We saw the DXY selling off. What was really the cause, the catalyst for this sell-off is hard to pinpoint. We have some potential explanation with the tariffs, the trade war, the shift in Europe with taking over more lead in the Ukraine situation, strategic Bitcoin reserves in the US, and so on and so forth. But it's really hard to say which one was really the leading cause for this shift in momentum. We see here on the weekly time frame on the DXY, this was really a very, very strong bearish week. Going down to the 4-hour time frame, we were expecting, last week we went into the market with a neutral view on the market. We said there is a potential, there was a potential for this expanding structure here on top of this area of interest to the left. We were neutral here. We were looking for potential continuation. We did not get that. Instead, price just broke back below this low, and then we said we are targeting this low, and then we can see there was not even a reaction in this area. So the DXY just kept selling off and selling off, approaching now this area of interest to the left, but we can see we are losing some momentum here. So for next week, once again, I want to see very, very clear price action. So as long as we are above this high, and when we see some form of bearish continuation, we need a bit more volume accumulation here before we see the next drop to the downside. Then okay, I would entertain a short continuation. On the other hand, I would not be shocked if we just tickle down, tap into this area here, and then impulsively break back in, and then we see a follow-up bullish continuation, and then we know the dollar will strengthen again over the coming weeks. So it's really hard to say now. We would need some form of catalyst to go in either direction. On the euro US dollar on the weekly time frame, we can see this was an impressive week. We can see here this was clearly euro strengthening. It's a very, very strong bullish week. We are still here a bit in no man's land. We are approaching the next area of interest here. This is already a value area here to the left, going down to the 4-hour time frame. You can see we have here a small liquidity area to the left, but right now I'd like to see for price to form a very clear price action confirmation. We have a small liquidity point here, and if we get a 1, 2, 3 here, then of course I take the sign of the market. It has to be at least a 4-hour structure, or a very good structured 1-hour structure to then entertain a long continuation here. On the other hand, I would not be surprised going down to the 1-hour time frame here. We can see here a bit clearer. We have some areas of interest. I would not be surprised if price is retracing in this area, and if we then get some form of bigger bullish continuation structures intersecting with these areas here, then I'm happy to take along from these areas here. It's hard to really pinpoint an area for a potential short, so I would like to see some change in momentum, because you can see that in a lot of pairs we will discuss in the next few minutes that we are overextended. And even if we have an overall long bias like here, the moves, just a retrace moves into these liquidity areas for bigger structures might still be enough for a short-term counter trend trade. You can see here, if we are expecting a bigger structure, a bigger retrace into this area, then we are already talking of like 1.3, 1.4% move. So if we get on the lower time frame structured bear flag continuations going down to the 15-minute, for example, if we see early next week, we see some form of some form of bearish continuation patterns like so, with clear structures on the 15-minute, with the 1 hour entry in this area, that would still warrant the trade, even if we just look into the very first potential inflection point. This is already a move of 60 pips, so that gives us enough room to manage a trade. And if it then goes further down, we are already in a very nice position. Australian dollar, US dollar on the weekly time frame. Yeah, we can see overall the overall thesis is still in play. We were already a bit neutral. We said we had this impulsive move here. We are in a corrective phase, which then could lead to a next bigger leg to the downside. However, we were tapping into this value area here to the left. It could also be the start for the next longer move to the upside. I'm leaning a little bit more towards the higher time frame short, but the short term long, if that makes sense. So we have here a liquidity area here to the left. We can see that clear on the 4 hour time frame. We have quite a lot of areas which could make some sense to tap into before we then see a turnaround. This is now already a developed, like an evolved, sorry, that's the word I was looking for. We have now here an evolved structure. Initially we had this expanding structure here, and now we can see when we evolve the structure, then we have a potential 1, 2, 3 into these areas here intersecting here. So I would not be surprised if we see something like that over the coming days, and before we then see a higher time frame continuation short. So this would mean there is already some short-term long potential trades in here. Yeah, but we want to see clear, very similar to what we discussed on Euro US dollar. We want to see clear lower time frame price action confirmation. US dollar yen on the weekly time frame, we are still in a bearish momentum run, clearly bearish momentum. We discussed last week, we were, no, that was a week before already. We were stalling on this low to the left, and now going to the 1 hour time frame, straight to the 1 hour time frame. We are, you can see here to the left, okay, sorry, 4 hours maybe a bit better. Yeah, we have here some form of an area of interest, but it's hard to say. I mean, we can take every single area here and then give some value to it. So at the moment, is this enough for price to turn around? Looking on the daily time frame, we can see that we ended still bearish, but on two days in a row on strong long wicks. So this could be a potential start of a turnaround, but I'm leaning more towards a short continuation. And it's quite black and white on the 1 hour time frame. We can see here we have an area of interest here, a liquidity point. And if we get a clear structured 1, 2, 3 into this liquidity point here with the 1, 2, 3 proper basis here, then we know this would be deliberate price action, and I'm happy to enter a short in this area. However, if we see price just like breaking above early next week and forming some form of bull flag continuation, at least on the 1 hour time frame, then I take a sign of the market and change my bias and would entertain a long. Pound US dollar on the weekly time frame, we are still in a momentum run to the upside. We had a very strong bullish momentum week last week. We can see here this is also a structure which is slightly evolving, and I'm leaning more towards a long continuation here. Going down to the 1 hour time frame, we have, similar to Euro US dollar, we have some areas of interest here, some potential liquidity points which could be the base for a bullish continuation. The first would be here. So if we just see price starting to stall next week and forming a proper 1, 2, 3, a bit a flatter structure here on the 1 hour time frame with very clear structure, then I'm happy to entertain along. However, I would not be surprised if we see bigger structures over the coming days with a bit more retrace into these areas after this impulsive run to the upside. Euro Australian dollar, On the weekly time frame, you can see we finally filled this wick here to the left, and we closed slightly below the wick. Again, we wicked through, we washed out, and we are now prime position for potential sells. However, we cannot deny that we are still in a bullish momentum run, and euro is strong, so we have to consider both and therefore look for very clear price action. But we can see here, if we just go to the daily time frame and we just have a look on the proportion. So when we measure here this initial impulsive run into the bigger consolidation structure here, this corrective phase, and then just line up it here to the structure. So like we can see, we finished this 1, 2, 3 move, right? We had the 1, 2, and 3, and this lines up very nicely with the length. The two legs have the same length, so it's very nice proportion. So we would need to see some form of a bit more price action here before we see the next move to the upside. So either on the 1 hour time frame here, maybe either we see very clear deliberate 1, 2, 3 structure in this area to accumulate a bit more volume, then yes, I would entertain a long continuation. On the other hand, after this momentum run, I would not be surprised if we see a bit bigger retraces. And then again, these moves are big. So if we just retrace into this area from where we are right now into this area, we are talking of 177 pips. So if we get on the lower time frame, here on the 15 minutes, for example, if we get some deliberate structures early next week, even if it's above this very small liquidity point to the left, and we get something like that, I'm still happy to entertain a short here. I know it's slightly higher risk where it's positioned here, but after this extreme momentum run last week, I'm expecting a bigger retrace in these pairs to form bigger continuation patterns overall. And these trades here would then already be more than enough to entertain short-term counter trend trades, if you want to call it like that. Euro New Zealand dollar is exactly the same. Look on the weekly time frame, we are not that prime positioned. We finished the 1, 2, 3 move. We broke completely outside structure, and we ended outside structure in a bit stronger weekly candle than we saw before, and we have here nothing really to the left. So there is much more room to go in Euro New Zealand dollar than in Euro Australian dollar right now. Therefore, I want to see clear price action confirmation. Going down here to the 4 hour time frame, we can see we have here a very clear liquidity area here, a small bullish continuation, which now lost steam here. And after this run outside the structure, we would need a bit more volume accumulation before we see the next run to the upside. And therefore, I would like to see a structured flag into this liquidity area here. And I would definitely then entertain a long continuation here, because that would then already look in proportion and might take until the mid next week before we see a long continuation in that area. Pound Australian dollar on the weekly time frame, starting here, we can see we are on the move up into this value area here to the left. So there is still a little bit room to go, and we go straight to the 4 hour time frame. We can see here we left some, so this is the previous high here. Yeah, you can see that. So price actually had a very small continuation here, broke out, retested this area here, and then started to move up again. So technically, price does not really have to come back down all the way. But again, I would not be surprised after this moves when we see a bit bigger retrace and retesting this area one more time, which would then, you see it here on the 1 hour time frame, which would then basically finish this structure here with the 1, 2, 3 into this small liquidity area here. And that would be prime for a long continuation in that area. But as we said before, it technically not necessary because it did retest already. So if it's really enough momentum, we could potentially see a structured flag here on the 1 hour time frame, just in this area here, hovering around in this area, and then be ready on Tuesday or very late Monday evening for a potential long continuation. So I would not ignore that fact at all, but I'm leaning more towards a bigger structure overall. Canadian dollar, New Zealand dollar, very, very similar on the weekly time frame. You can see we are heading for the next bigger value areas higher up. We are in a bullish momentum run. We broke the previous week's the previous high. We had that already last week, and then we retested it already. You can see this line here is from the previous high, and we clearly retested it. We had this small liquidity area here to the left. So technically price does not have to come back. But again, after these strong moves, it would be perfect to see. That would be a 4-hour structure. That would then be enough volume accumulation for the next bigger move to the upside. So I want to be a bit more patient next week and wait for a 1, 2, 3 into this area, retesting the whole area here again, the previous high, and then going for a long continuation. Pound Canadian on the weekly. We were discussing that as well last week. We saw that price became more and more erratic in this area. The moves became bigger. We are outside this previous high here, which was the start of this structure here, and we are looking into this value area here to the left. So there's still a bit more room to go, but again, we want to see some more volume accumulation before we then see the next bigger move to the upside. And going here to the 1 hour time frame, we have this liquidity area here to the left. We have already a 1 and 2. We have a potential expanding structure. So ideally price is coming back one more time, intersecting somewhere in this area here, which then would really warrant a 4-hour entry for a long continuation. Australian dollar yen, that's the trade I took last week. That's the only trade I took last week. Ended unfortunately in a break even. On the weekly time frame, we were looking actually for a short continuation to finish the move into this wick fill here to the left, because the previous week we ended outside or below this previous low here. So that was a clear short continuation, what we were looking for. On the 4-hour time frame, we got that actually on Thursday. Then we had this 1, 2, 3 expanding structure into this liquidity area here to the left. So I entered after this 4-hour candle close. I let the trade run, and then the trade actually here on the 1 hour time frame, the trade here reached around 2.9 before then starting to turn around. And at that point, I just moved my stop loss to break even, and I got tagged out on the pip, like really on the pip. My entry order that time here, the closing candle was on 94.4, and yeah, it really reached exactly that area and then continued to drop again. So that's yeah, ended on a break even for me. But yeah, nothing else I could have done. I could have maybe locked in a bit more, but if I follow structure, I did this mistake last year so many times. I locked in too much and ended up with like 1%, and the trade was running for like 7-8%. So this year I tried to let the trades run a bit longer, and yeah, of course I get like tagged out for a break even, but yeah, it is what it is. So I will move on and see. Overall, I'm happy with the trade, and I'm fairly happy with the management. So I'm looking now for a short continuation. Yeah, looking on the daily time frame, we can see there is still some room to go to finish this gap here to the low, to finish the wick. It's basically the overall, it's still the same thesis, but we can see we also we lose a bit steam, very similar to US dollar yen. We ending on wicks here, but positioning is still fair, still prime for the next leg to the downside. So I want to see clear price action confirmation. If we evolve the structure similar to what we did on the other pairs, we could potentially entertain something like that and see that that might be the start of a bigger evolving structure, which would then lead to a short-term potential long intersecting with these areas here. So yeah, we will see. Right now, how price is, where price is right now, here I don't want to entertain anything. I want to see a clear rejection of some area of interest, preferably going back into these areas here and then coming back in and showing me some bearish continuation. Or then even below in this area here. So that's still okay. I just want to see at least a 1 hour structure before I entertain any trade after this kind of price action and where we are set. So yeah, that's it. That's my watch list for the coming week. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.